Hello and welcome back to our channel. Today we will be looking at how to set up or rather create your terrain using points. Alright, so first of all, after you have launched your OpenRoads Designer, okay, you can go ahead and launch your workspace as well as your work set accordingly. And over here, I'm just using the Singapore standards and the work set LTA for the example. And we can just go ahead now and create a new 3D file. Right, so I'm just going to place the file in my project folder, for example. So I will just give it a name here called um, import from points, or rather, if you like, I can also call it terrain from points. Okay, so just make sure that over here for the seed file, you are actually using seed 3D. If not, just go on ahead to browse. I'm sorry about that. Okay, just go on ahead to browse and look for the corresponding 3D seed file. So I'm just going to go ahead and select the seed 3D Singapore Roads Design, open that up. So after making sure all of that is correct, just go on and hit save. Okay, so if you have an existing file, just go ahead and replace it if you are sure of that. If not, since you're creating a new file, you shouldn't have that problem. All right, so let's just wait a little while the file is being created. Okay, so once the file has been created, we can then go ahead and bring in the reference topo survey that contains the point data that we will be using to create our terrain model. So for myself, I'm just going to go ahead and browse to either one of my topo files. Okay, so over here, I'm just going to bring in the topo plan.dgn. And of course, um, over here you can see that it is a very simple topo file that we have consisting of spot levels as well as all this what do you call it, the shed cell, all right, the cross marks. So first thing you want to establish is what data you can use from the topo file. Okay, so over here, if I were to go ahead and do a quick check, selecting the text here and going over to the properties, you will be able to see that this text does contain the elevation data, all right? But so does the point or the spot levels, or rather the spots, okay? So over here at the point element, you can also see that it contains elevation data. So in this case, this is a very good set of topo data where both the text as well as the points can be used to create your terrain model. However, because this exercise focuses primarily on the creation of terrain from point data, we will look at how to actually filter out the points from all this data that we have here using what we call a graphical filter. So what we want to do now is go on ahead to the terrain tab, and of course we will need to establish as well what are the data or levels that those points that we want is residing in. So for example here, if you hover your cursor over this particular point, you will see that it is in the level called FB underscore points. And for this one here, the cyan color is under the road points level. And for the red one, you can see it is under the ground points. Okay, so having known all this, okay, once you have established all these levels, we can go on ahead to this create ribbon group where you can create from graphical filter. But first of all, we need to access the graphical filter manager to set up the corresponding filters. So just go ahead to graphical filter manager, and at the very top here you will be able to create filters or filter groups. Okay, so we will start off by creating our filter, right clicking on it, and then select create filter. So for this new filter, I would just call it spot levels. Okay, just a simple one. Description is optional. I leave it to the users whether you want to include some brief description of this. Feature type, of course, is not break line, but rather we should be selecting spot since we are looking at spot levels. All right. And of course, do you want this to link to terrain features? Now, if you check this, it will always update based on the source graphics. So if your topo survey has been updated and you have refreshed the reference file, then the terrain model will automatically update. All right, so we will edit filter here. So there are a lot of filters that you can see on the left hand side that you can use to create your terrain model from. But usually I would suggest that we use the levels filter because levels are usually very specific. Okay, you will have a lot of elements using the same colors, using the same line styles, line weights, and all that. But when we talk about levels, usually levels are set up to be specific and only contains a specific set of data. All right. Say for example, over here you can see that all the points, they are separated by different levels depending on what kind of points there are. Okay, so similarly, I will look from this list here, all right, to actually go through like, for example, what we have established earlier, FP points. So I can double click on FP points so that it moves to the right hand side. All right, so as you can see, I can just simply go on ahead and look little bit more details points. Do we want to include this? If I do, I can just go ahead and double click on details points, right? So as we go along, we will just continue adding in the levels that we want from the left hand side to the right hand side. So I will go ahead and look for roads points now. So roads is RO, yep, this one here, okay. And then what is the red one just now? It was ground points. So I'm just gonna do a few of this, just to give you an idea of how to actually um, use all these filters to pick up the points that we want, all right, but not necessarily um, to do for all of it, okay? But of course, in a real project, you will have to filter them out and then move all the necessary points over to the right hand side. Now, of course, you can also filter this out using element types. Say, for example, you know that these are shared cell, right? These are shared cell. Now, why do we want to filter by element types? Because notice this is text, but it is also sharing the same level. So if you want to distinguish between the text and the points, we would be it would be good for us to actually tell OpenRoads Designer that we only want to filter out the elements that are shared cells. So I'm just gonna get in here, all right, create a filter for the element type called shared cell. All right, and once that is done, I can go ahead and click on finish, and you will see that there are these two element or rather filters that I've set up for element types and levels. And once I have set that up, I can go ahead and click finish. So once I'm done with that, I can now go and create my terrain model from graphical filter. So this time we will create from graphical filter. Select that, and then there will be a pop-up that requires a few inputs from us. First of all, the graphical filter group. Now, notice we only have one graphical filter, so there are no groups involved. Therefore, we can just go ahead and select our graphical filter from here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Spot Levels. And you might be asking, how do we know whether the elements that we have filtered out is the one that will be used for the terrain model creation? So you can just click on this preview and you will see all the elements are then highlighted in magenta. So all these points are highlighted in magenta means those are the elements that has been filtered out. Okay, so if you're happy with that, just go ahead and set the rest up. Ignore feature linking, only check this box if you do not want your terrain model to update based on any subsequent updates to your source graphics. Okay, so this will cancel off and supersede the option we had earlier if you tick this ignore feature linking box. So for now, I will just ignore it, or rather I will just leave it blank because I want my terrain model to update every time there is a change to my topo survey. Okay, triangulation options, I would just go ahead and select remove slivers. Alright, and for the feature definition, I can set this up to existing triangles for the triangulation display. And for the name, maybe I will just give it existing ground. Okay, now once all of these parameters are set up, all you need to do now is follow the on-screen prompt and just left click on the first parameter here to accept. So left click. And then once you see this data point to accept selection, just go on ahead and do another left click. And once that is done, the terrain model will be processed, okay, based on the filters that we have set up. And once all those elements have been processed, the terrain model will be created like so, okay? So there is a stray point here, all right? So we can ignore that. Even if you need to do some modifications, you can always come back here to edit model. And then you can always use the delete vertex to just get rid of that so that you are seeing only for this area of what do you call it, area of interest. So you can see all these triangulations coming in, and they are all triangulating based on the points that we have selected. Okay, so in a 3D view, this is what you will get for the triangulated terrain. Okay, so hope this helps. Thank you very much for your time.